All right, you guys, so before we start on what we're going to focus on today, which is cross-price elasticity, I'd love for you to just take a minute and write down 5 things that you can remember about elasticity in general. Over the last few classes, as you've been working with Mr. B and I, 5 things that you remember that you think are important that you've learned about elasticity. So just take a second, we'll refresh our memories, and then we'll continue on. Use your iPad or paper, it's fine. What's something you remember, Jules? Something about price elasticity.
That it measures the responsiveness of consumers for purchases to pay.
Yes. Nice. Something maybe without reading.
No.
Okay, what is it?
I remember the formula.
The formula,
Yeah.
what is it?
So PV equals percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in price.
Yes, nice. Anything else? What about how we're understanding if something's elastic or inelastic, Eddie?
Splat. Splat.
Splat, yes. What does splat refer to?
Substitutes proportion of income, luxury, or necessity if they're not or counter-responding.
Yeah, and what is splat? What does that mean?
It's just like how elastic or inelastic it'll be depending on these different variables.
Yeah. And then what about the numbers? Remember when we were looking at the numbers? Yeah.
If it's
Alex.
if the PEG is inelastic, if it's higher than 1, it's elastic.
Yeah.
And if it's 1, like unit perfect.
Unit, what is that called? Unit elastic. Do you guys remember what unit elasticity is? What's unit elasticity? Yeah.
When the change
Anya.
in price, the percentage of change in price results in identical percent change in demand.
Yes. It's the same, right? A percentage change in price that is equal to the exact same percentage change in quantity demanded. Okay, great. So now our minds are in elasticity, which is great. So we're gonna transition a little bit today and learn a bit about another form of elasticity, which is cross-price elasticity, okay? We're gonna define that, we're gonna calculate that, and we're gonna understand what that relationship looks like. So, just based on the title, cross-price elasticity, what do you think that maybe that means? I mean, let's kind of break this down a little bit, like this word, cross-price elasticity. What could that be referring to? Yeah, Will?
The crossing of the intersection of the demand and supply curve. Is it maybe crossing?
Maybe. What else do you think it could maybe refer to? If we're, maybe like if you're looking at 2 different things. Well, we're gonna play with that a little bit more.
What
Yeah,
does it have to
Eddie.
do with substitutes or complementary goods?
Ah, yes, it does. Great. So, cross-price elasticity of demand. Basically, what we're looking at here is the responsiveness of consumers to a particular good based on the price of another. So we're going to be looking at how the quantity demanded of one good is affected by the price of another, specifically for us, for cross-price elasticity of demand. So, Eddie, to kind of expand on what you were saying, this whole idea of substitutes and complements, right? Because with substitutes and complements, that would be a good opportunity for us to understand a relationship, right? So, with this being said, let's think about substitutes first. What are substitutes? Give me an example of 2 substitutes, Bakari. 2 things that could be substitutes.
Butter and margarine.
Butter and margarine, yeah, great. So, what do you think would happen if we're looking at this, the responsiveness of quantity demanded to the price of another good? If the price of butter, and their substitutes, if the price of butter goes up, what do you think would happen to the quantity demanded of margarine?
Increase.
Yeah. And their substitutes, right? So what about with complements? Well, what's an example of 2 complements?
Okay, compliments. salt
Or
and
not.
pepper, let's say.
Mhm.
When the price of
Salt and pepper, yeah.
one goes up in demand for the other goes down.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of what we're going to be exploring a little bit. So does that make sense? This whole idea of what happens with substitutes and what happens with complements if the price goes up of one to the quantity demanded of the other? Yeah? So let's look at both of those. So with complements, we're looking at how much will the demand increase when the price of a complement falls by a certain amount, right? And that's what we were just kind of figuring out about complements. So with salt and pepper, how much will the demand for salt increase when the price of pepper goes down? Versus substitutes, how much demand for a good will decrease when the price of a substitute falls? That make sense? So, all right, if we're looking at this whole idea of the relationship between complements or the relationship between substitutes, and we know that cross-price elasticity of demand is the responsiveness of consumers to a particular good in the price of another, how do you think we could calculate that? I mean, let's think back to what our PED equation is. Regina, you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Yes. So what do you think we could potentially say the cross-price elasticity of demand equation would be if we're looking at the two and we're comparing the change in quantity demanded of one to the change in price of another?
It would be,
What do you think? Really similar to price elasticity of demand, except we're looking at two different products. So what's the equation for price elasticity of demand?
percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in price.
Yeah.
So when the percentage change in quantity demanded of one of the products over the percentage change of the quantity demanded of the second one.
Close, but remember with price elasticity of demand, we're looking at the quantity demanded over price. And here we're talking specifically about how the change in price affects the quantity demanded. So you're on the right track. So we're looking at the percentage change in quantity demanded of one divided by the percentage.
Change in price of the other.
Yes. Exactly. So we call it the XED coefficient, okay? So that's exactly what it is. The percentage change in quantity demanded of one good divided by the percentage change in price of another. Do you guys remember how we calculate the percentage change in quantity demanded versus the percentage change in price? Eddie, is your hand up? What do you think though? The percentage change in quantity demanded of one good. How do we calculate that? If we know that the price has gone from $4 to $5 and we're wanting to calculate the percentage change
About the ratio.
in the quantity, like what is that formula that we're using to calculate the percentage change in quantity demanded?
It'd be the price, the old price times the old quantity demanded over, no.
Because we know right now the percentage change in quantity demanded is divided by the percentage change in price, right? So if we're calculating the percentage change in quantity demanded, do you guys remember how we figure that out? We've got an old quantity demanded, a quantity, and we have a new quantity demanded, right? So we have to calculate what the percentage change is. Nobody? Jules?
It's the difference between the two
Yeah.
divided by the average of the two. It's the first plus the other is over 2 times the profit.
Oh, closer. Yeah, Regina?
It's Q2 minus Q1 over Q1 plus Q2 over 2.
It's Q2 minus Q1 over Q1.
Oh.
Right? It's just, we're looking at, remember guys, so we're looking at what's the new quantity demanded minus the old quantity demanded divided by the old quantity demanded. That's what we figure.
I've told them to do the average because we don't know which way it goes.
Oh, okay.
For elasticity of demand.
Well, there we go. So Mr. B expanded on that. So anyways, we've got our ways to calculate the percentage change, and then we place those two into the formula to figure it out. So, let's play with this a little bit. The market for soft drinks. So let's look at this. Let's look at Coke and Pepsi. What are Coke and Pepsi?
Substitutes.
Substitutes. Yeah. And what about Coke and Sprite? Substitutes. Yeah. What would maybe be the difference between the two types of substitutes?
One is
Different
less than one.
Price.
Well, like let's, if a
How much of a
person,
substitute they are to each other?
yes, exactly, Hannah. How much of a substitute they are to each other, right? I mean, if we're looking at Coke and Pepsi, would they be strong substitutes?
Yeah.
Or maybe Coke and Sprite not as strong?
But
Right.
then there's also preference and brand. So,
Yes. We're looking at a hypothetical situation with this one example.
right, no,
Where?
I know, but I'm just saying Sprite and Coke are the same company. So.
Oh, yes. Very good. Okay. So let's look at Coke and Pepsi first. So, if there's a change in price of Coke, and that leads to a large change in the demand of Pepsi, as we've mentioned, we'd say those are what types of substitutes? Well, that's what you had said before, Hannah. Like,
They're strong substitutes?
yeah, they're strong substitutes. Because we know if the price of Coke changes, that's going to lead to a large change in the demand of Pepsi. Right? So people are very easy to exchange which one they prefer. I mean, and a lot of people are not like that just because they're very adamantly for Pepsi or for Coke. But again, just looking specifically at the fact that they're brown sodas. Okay? So, let's think a little bit about when we were calculating the price elasticity of demand and this idea of it being greater than or less than 1. So let's play with that a little bit for cross price elasticity. So, if we know for Coke and Pepsi that they're strong substitutes, what do you think that means in regards to the elasticity, specifically the number, the XED? Do you think it would be greater than or less than 1? What do you guys think? What does it mean if the price elasticity of demand or the cross price elasticity of demand is greater than 1? What does that tell us, Alex?
Elastic.
It's elastic. So what do you think for this? I mean, we're looking at a small change in the price of Coke leads to a large change in the demand of Pepsi. Yeah?
Well, it'd be elastic, so it would go a lot. It would
Yeah.
change a lot.
Yes.
Quantity dependent would change a lot.
Yes, exactly. And we know, just as Alex had mentioned, that if it's elastic, that means it's greater than 1, right? What about Coke and Sprite? Coke becomes more expensive. Quantity demanded of Sprite only changes a little bit. So what does that tell us about their relationship with substitutes? Are they strong substitutes? So what do you think that means then in regards to the cross price elasticity and whether or not it's greater than or less than 1? Yeah.
Would it be inelastic?
Yeah. It'd be more inelastic. Exactly. So does that make sense? Yeah? All right, let's get some visuals in here. Ooh, barbecue. So, we've got some charcoal. We have a charcoal barbecue. What are those?
Complimentary.
Yeah, compliments. So let's explore this idea of compliments a little bit more. So, as we talked about with substitutes, if the price of Coke goes up, what does that do to the change in quantity demanded of Pepsi? Yeah, right? So they're both going up. With compliments, if the price of charcoal goes up, what happens to the demand for charcoal barbecues? Yeah. So see how with substitutes, the relationship is what? You know what we call that?
Just inversely proportional.
Yeah. It's a positive relationship. Well, it's a positive relationship actually. But with complements, we're going the other direction, right? So what do you think that tells us about that? What you had just mentioned, Alex. The opposite is what?
Inversely proportional.
It's an inverse relationship. So, we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but this idea of it being an inverse relationship means that the value is always going to be negative. So remember with price elasticity of demand, we were saying it's always negative because of that inverse relationship, so we remove the negative signs and we look at it as an absolute value. Yeah. So with complements and substitutes is different, because with substitutes the relationship is positive, so the value is positive, but with complements the relationship is negative, inverse, and then the value is negative. So that's a good way as we're calculating the cross-price elasticity of demand to understand if it's a complement or a substitute based on whether or not it's a positive or a negative value. Okay. So let's think about this relationship. Can somebody come up and draw a graph of, we're going to look at two different markets. We're going to look at the market for charcoal and the market for charcoal barbecues. Do I have any volunteers, or should I call someone? Anybody interested? Matt? Philip? All we're going to come up, Philip. I know you like to draw graphs. So, it's super simple. This is super simple. We're looking at the market for charcoal, and we're just figuring out, all of a sudden the price of charcoal to producers goes up. So just look at the market for charcoal. All of a sudden charcoal's more expensive. It costs more to producers, so what does that do? You guys think about that. All of a sudden the price of charcoal is more expensive to producers. What should that do to our curves?
Shift the supply curve to the right.
It's more expensive.
To the left.
Why? Why to the left?
Price goes up.
left.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. So Philip, demonstrate please a shift in the supply curve. Let's make sure we label those curves.
D like down.
Nice.
Nice.
There you go. And what is that? What curve is that? We have to label it. There you go. So what does that do to our equilibrium?
It decreases the quantity demanded.
Jordan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Okay. So can you guys see that? As it becomes more expensive to purchase charcoal, they're going to supply less, which is going to do what to our price?
It increases the price.
Mm-hmm. Great. So, Bakari, come on down. So we know that this has happened, okay? We know that the price has gone up because of the fact that charcoal is more expensive. Great, Philip, that was perfect. Well done. Okay, so now we're going to see what happens to the market for barbecues, okay? So you know that this has happened. All of a sudden, it's more expensive for charcoal. What have we said about the relationship between charcoal and charcoal barbecues? Yeah, so what do we think if the price of charcoal goes up, happens to the charcoal barbecue demand or market? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Draw it in. Nice work. All right, guys, so now that we know that the price of charcoal's gone up, what do we think happens to the market for charcoal barbecues?
Goes down.
What does?
The demand.
As Bakari is going to illustrate. So, let's put some hypothetical numbers in here. So you guys actually need to do a calculation now based on the equation that we looked at. Let's use these two numbers. We now know that the price of charcoal's gone up from $10 to $13. So just note that down somewhere. Write down those numbers. And then I'll show you how that affected the change, the quantity demanded of barbecues. And we're going to use those numbers to figure out what the XED coefficient is.
Do we know the quantity?
Yeah, I'm going to give you that right now.
Because otherwise we can't.
Oh, wait.
So we use
So the price change is 10 to 13.
So we use 30% and what's the other for quantity?
Yeah. Nice work.
50 to 50.
So this, yeah, from 10 to 13, and the quantity demanded goes from 55 to 50. Okay? So take a second and figure out what the XED coefficient is for the market between charcoal and charcoal barbecues. And that'll help us understand what, the complements and whether or not they're strong complements or not as strong complements. Feel free to break down the equation when you're calculating it if you want. What's the XED coefficient, guys? You remember the formula? Are you talking about like just what Mr. B had taught you before, or just
Yeah,
either way is fine. Just
Point, is it like point elasticity, like arc elasticity? They're different kinds of.
let's go with what I've been what I've been doing with you guys.
Point.
So if we're looking at the price, how do we say we calculate the percentage change in price?
Okay, I think it's point. The condition is point.
So let's look at these two guys. The percentage change in price, the percentage change in quantity demanded. How do we calculate the percentage change in price? We look at the new price. Regina, yeah?
Over the whole price.
Yes. What was the quantity demand then?
It's the new quantity demanded minus the old quantity demanded over the old quantity.
So that was what, 50 minus 55?
Yeah, over.
All right, so that should get us started. Who wants to come up here and show me what the XED coefficient is? Matt, you want to do it? Oh, Mark, I'm sorry. We're calling you all different names today. Mark. Now remember the one thing that we talked about, what do we talk about when it comes to negatives versus positives in regards to the cross-price elasticity?
We take the absolute.
What was it? Remember when I was just talking about this idea of the relationship between substitutes for the relation versus the relationship between complements?
They're inverse.
Yeah, so, exactly. So when we're looking at complements, the relationship is inverse, so that's how we figure out whether or not it's a complement. So, for cross-price elasticity, for cross-price elasticity, we keep the negative value in if it's negative, because that's what tells us if it's a complement, right, Kai? Does that make sense?
I can't.
It's not working. Does anybody have another marker? Mr. B, do you have a marker?
I think I might.
Okay, so Bakar, what did I just say about the negative versus positive?
Something about complements.
Yes.
It tells if it's a complement or something.
Yes, okay, so let's backtrack for a second. What do we say about substitutes? If the price of one goes up, what does that do to the quantity demanded of the other if they're substitutes? Also goes up, right? It's a positive relationship. So with substitutes, the XED coefficient should be a positive value. That's how we know if it's a substitute. But with complements, what do we say happens? The price of one goes up, quantity demanded of the other goes down. That's an inverse relationship. And then it's a negative. So with cross-price elasticity, you need to know whether or not it's negative or positive because that's what tells you if it's a substitute or a complement. So we just currently we're looking at the market for charcoal and charcoal barbecues, right? And what are those? Substitutes or complements?
Complement.
They're complements. So what should the value be, negative or positive? Yeah.
Oh, you want me to take friends?
Yeah.
Here we go. Okay, so,
Walk us through your thought process.
all right, well, here's the formula.
Mm-hmm.
Change in quantity, the original quantity, divided by the change in price over the original price.
Yeah.
Change in quantity is 50, went from 50 to 55, from 55 to 50. So the second quantity minus the original quantity over 55.
Yeah.
and then the same for the price, and then we just put it into a calculator. Wait, did you say we wanted it like an absolute value?
Well,
No, yeah.
does somebody want to explain to Mark what we were just saying about the idea of
Oh,
complements
yeah,
versus
show what,
substitutes?
okay, I see. Alright.
You got it.
I got it.
Yeah, but.
Okay, thanks, guys. Alright, so then I was, okay. So it's, what are our digits?
One is fine. All right, that's great. Okay, so you guys see how that's a negative value? And does that make sense, this whole idea of them being complements, and therefore we know that the value is negative? Is this value? So that's the next thing that we want to look at. This whole idea of this value being, so Kai, what you just said to me, explain to the class. What you just said. What is this value?
Smaller than 1.
The value is smaller than 1. So what does that tell us about the relationship between the complements?
They're
Mm.
so there will be a strong reaction to a change in price.
Yeah. That makes sense, guys? This idea of it being less than 1 means that they're less elastic, they're inelastic, so not as sensitive. So this is valuable, right? Because this is basically telling us what the relationship is like between the substitutes or complements. So we're looking at charcoal and charcoal barbecues, and that's telling us, yeah, I mean, if the price of one changes, that does affect the quantity demanded of the other, but not as much. And like, let's say, what do you think would be an example of 2 complements that would be really, really strong complements, and therefore that number would be much higher? Yeah, Anya.
Cars and gas.
Cars and gas. That could maybe be stronger.
Models and model.
Maybe like a left shoe and a right shoe. Shoes and shoelaces. Yeah. I mean, what else are you really going to do with shoelaces? Okay.
Yeah.
You just buy boots instead?
What?
Oh, batteries and any battery.
Yeah. A battery and any battery-powered device. Yeah. Okay, so does that make sense, you guys? Okay, so now we're going to look at something else. Oh. I don't know if you guys remember the show. It was from my generation. So, we're looking at 2 things right now. A cow and a chicken. But let's consider them in their form that we use them in. Let's look at beef, let's look at chicken. Beef and chicken, what are they? Substitutes. Yeah, nice work. Okay, so we're gonna think a little bit about this market now, okay? Anya, you wanna come up? Come on down. So let's look at the market for chicken, okay, you guys? The market for chicken, let's say there's a coyote attack all over North America and a whole bunch of chickens are killed, unfortunately, in the process. What does that do for the market for chicken? All of a sudden, Hey guys, what does that do? All of a sudden there's a coyote attack all over North America. Poor chickens are being killed. What does that do to the market for chickens? Yeah, Bakari. Yeah. Not as many chickens. So, let's see that. So if the supply curve shifts to the left, what does that do to the price in the market for chickens? Yeah. As Anya has illustrated. Nice work. Look at all the labels. Great job with labeling. Nice work. Okay. Does that make sense then? Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. Okay, thank you. Will,
Yeah.
want to come up?
Yeah.
So we know that this has happened. The market for chicken has resulted in a price increase. So what does this do to our market for beef? All of a sudden, chicken is more expensive. What does that do?
To the market of beef.
For the market of beef. So all of a sudden, chicken's more expensive. We know that chicken and beef are what?
There's going to be a shift in the demand curve.
Why? Explain.
Is this a substitute?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Great.
It's one of the laws. You didn't draw the arrow.
All done. So,
So we saw the market for chicken.
yeah.
Nice. Yes. So what does that do to our
Equilibrium.
quantity demanded?
Quantity sub-equilibrium.
You have to write it. Equilibrium.
Well, you can just draw the dots in so that people can
yeah,
understand how that shifts the equilibrium. All right, guys. So write down the numbers here for the market for chicken and the change of price because we're going to do another calculation. So we can see that the decrease in supply for chicken has resulted in an increase in the price of chicken from 5 to 6. So just jot down those two numbers because we're going to use that for calculation in a second. Nice job, Will. Thank you. So, how has that affected the market for beef? The quantity demanded for beef, because of the increase in price of chicken, has gone from 100 to 125. So let's punch all those numbers in. 100 to 125. Well, let's figure out what the XED coefficient is for the market of chicken and beef. Should this be a negative or positive value? Positive. We'll see. Yes, because they're substitutes. Kai, get ready. I'm gonna call on you.
Yours is gone. It's right there.
We'll walk through it. All right. So, let's do it together, but Kai's gonna support me. So what is the equation?
Change
In what?
quantity.
Kai, what's it over?
Percentage change in quantity.
Of what?
It wouldn't do anything.
Yeah, of the other good. Okay? So what are those numbers, Kai?
125 minus divided by 100 minus 5 divided by 5.
Okay. 0.1.
0.25.
Mm-hmm.
No, 0.25.
Okay.
Divided by 0.2
Yeah.
equals 1.25.
Cool. Okay. Did you guys get this value? Who didn't get this value? Not that you'd admit it. Okay, so let's think about this for a second. Positive or negative? And why is that? Yeah. It's more than 1, so what does that tell us, Hannah? Yes. So the value is more than 1, right? And what did we say about the value being more than 1? Strong substitutes. Nice work. Okay. So now we're going to play a little game, an economics game. So we're going to match these up, okay, you guys? We've got a list over here. We've got a list over here. These are the definitions for all of these. So take a minute, work by yourself, and think about which of these connect with which of those. And then we'll walk through them all together. So when you finished, you guys, I want you to swap with your friend, swap papers or swap iPads with your friend when you're done. Just try to think about it for your second. Then when we swap papers, you're going to work with your partner to kind of talk through which of your answers is right if you have conflicting answers. And then as a pair, you're going to come to a conclusion. If you finish, you guys can start talking amongst your pair.
No, stop it.
Argue your points. See what your opinions are.
Oh, it's less than Phil. You start.
Oh, okay.
But I guess it's.
Yeah. What do you understand by that? Like how the one market affects the other?
I get how one market affects the other.
Yeah, so just like walk through it yourself, you know, and try not to get confused with the fact that there's two different graphs. It's just because of the fact that we're looking at how the two relationships.
No, I get the graphs, it's just that
Oh.
because I felt like you wrote change in price.
Oh, when I wrote the two, oh, so I just wrote the two values.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But so that was that
Oh.
had
yes.
differently put them. But actually,
I mean, it's, now the biggest reason why the price is on the bottom is just because of the fact that the price is what is affecting the quantity demanded. That's why, like, you're on the base is always what is, because of the power figure, right? So the price is what's going to be affecting the quantity demanded. Yeah?
Thank you.
Okay, have you guys swapped? Have you guys swapped papers?
Yes.
Come on, this is easy.
I know, but it's definitely.
You swapped? Did you guys get the same answers?
Yeah.
What, Philip, did you?
No, he's a little slow.
You're a little bit slower. Bakari, how are you doing? Are you guys gonna swap? Okay. Oh, you did? And you got the same? How are you guys doing?
Almost fine.
Are you doing some swaps?
I finished mine.
I'm not.
So you guys are gonna check? Regina? Will, how you doing? Do a swap. Have a conversation about it. What are you confused by? Yeah? Let's see. So what is the event I was confused? That was the last two. We haven't actually touched on today.
We just did 4 and 5 because we just did that if we substitute, then it's.
Well, let's see, so perfectly elastic. If it's perfectly elastic, what does that mean? So like if there's a change in price, what does that do to the quantity? It's perfectly elastic.
Oh, no.
Yeah, yeah. So if the price changes at all, the quantities are, if the price changes at all, the margin is going to change. So that's the thing that we know about being perfectly elastic, right? So.
Would you rather say?
I'm not saying anything yet. I want you to think, about it.
Easy set.
Maybe you can get a 6.
Elastic, we said that if the price changes, that the quantity demanded of change unquantity. So what types of goods do you think would pursue that? Goods that were related? So I mean, if we're looking at the idea of goods that are being completely related versus completely unrelated, if they're unrelated and the price of one changes, what's that going to be the quantity of the other is going to change? If they're unrelated, not right.
All of them are.
No, I got 4, 5, 6.
So how you doing?
4 and 5.
Is there any discrepancies?
You get 4 and 5 wrong, 6 and 7.
Any discrepancies?
Here you go.
You got it? Okay. So can we start walking through the answers and we'll kind of talk about why? Will, how you doing? Okay. So, let's go around. Kai, what's the answer to 1? Dun dun dun. Explain it, Kai. Why? Why is that the case?
Because the coefficient is higher, also smaller.
Smaller one is less elastic. It's inelastic. Yeah. All right. Bakari, 2.
Cost price elastic thing.
Yeah. Why?
Because it's greater than 1, and that's the definition.
Jules, 3.
Is a
And why? What is that? What is unit elasticity again?
when it changes at the same rate.
Yeah. Philip. XCD is negative. What does that tell us?
XED is negative, that tells us they are calm.
What is it? Don't look at anybody else. Think about that. We're talking about the relationship being
I'd like to
positive.
say compliments.
Why?
Because when the price of one goes up, the demand for the other goes down.
So the relationship is,
Negative.
it's an inverse relationship, yes. Nice word. Eddie, let's do the next one. XCD is positive. What does that tell us?
It tells us that there's substitutes.
Why?
Because, I'm not sure. Because the change is higher than the change in price. Or no,
Kinda,
the change
let's-
in price is drastic, and the change in quantity demand.
They're both
Yeah.
positive changes.
So when the price of one good goes up, the quantity demanded of the other good goes up.
Yeah, it's just that. It's just the fact that there is a positive relationship because when the price of one goes up, the quantity demanded of the other also goes up. That's how we know that they're substitutes. Okay? Hannah, on to the next.
Yeah.
Perfectly elastic. So these ones are a little bit tougher. These ones I had you guys think a bit because we haven't really talked about perfectly elastic and perfectly inelastic in relationship across price elasticity. C. Why?
Because if they're completely related, then they're gonna have an effect on each other, which means that they're elastic. Whereas if they're not related at all, then they won't have any effect on each other, so they'll be
Yeah.
elastic.
Exactly. So what are, Hannah, give me an example of 2 goods that have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah, fried chicken and organic quinoa.
Maybe, yeah.
Gas.
Fried chicken and carbs.
Yeah, so perfectly, no, because we're looking at the word perfectly.
Fried chicken
So-
and space shuttles.
Say what?
Fried chicken and space shuttles.
Fried chicken and space shuttles. Great.
Okay.
I mean, you could potentially argue that. Yes. They have nothing to do with each other, right? Okay, so the last but not least, Anya. I know you know what it is.
It's 2 goods that are collectively unrelated.
So explain that, Anya.
Because
Okay, guys, hold on, guys. Anya's explaining something.
inelastic means that like if the price of something changes, the demand will not change, how changes work. So if you have 2 goods that were, it didn't matter what the price was, they would still be the same quantity to buy it. Therefore, it would be 2 goods that are completely unrelated.
All right. That was fun. When is our break? Soon?
Yes.
Okay, well, let's take a break now because after this we're going to do, you guys are going to kind of work on some projects or problems. Let's work. So, you guys, what we're gonna do is we're gonna work out these calculations, okay? Eddie? Right? Write them down, because I'm actually gonna have you guys give me what you do. So,
Give it to you.
you're gonna give them to me, because I just wanna gauge what your comfort, what your understanding level is, where your understanding level is, and then we'll go through all of them together. But I just wanna see that you can get it. You can do it on a calculator. I mean, show us some of it just so I know that you know what to divide over what. Okay, you can do that. But you don't need to break it down. Yeah. If something confuses you, ask me, or feel free to ask somebody that's sitting next to you. I'm okay with you guys trying to figure problems out together,
Can you
but
close the door so I can really see?
it's also quite loud.
Did you capture everything down?
No. You can just write it down 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
So the idea with these, you guys, is we're not only looking at calculating the equation, but trying to really understand the relationships, you know? Are they strong substitutes? Are they substitutes? Are they complements? And, you know, by calculating it, we'll be able to figure that out. You're just so quiet.
It's closer to you.
Ella, how you doing? Is it negative or positive? How come? It's the demand. Quantity demand is up or down?
And the
What's the first one?
I'm just curious.
And I'm going to keep in mind also keep. I mean, is it more or less than one? And if it's less than one, what does it tell us about the strength of the confidence? Yeah, so I mean, it's a compliment or not, like, so keep that in mind.
Meaning it's greater than meaning it's greater than one.
So when we don't take actual values for less than standard, because less is good demand, we need to know so keep the negative value in, because that is what will tell us. So if it's a compliment, the little elasticity is based on what it wants to do. Yeah, but no, I know, this is where it's,
Exactly, so there you
yes,
take the
yes,
value.
yes. I was able to put it in
Hey,
Oh, yes.
It is negative.
Hey, you guys, just to clarify for 3, calculate the percentage change. All right, it should say percentage there. Already done it. How are you guys doing?
I have 2 people here.
Regina, how you doing? Yeah. Will, how you doing? Will, you good? We're gonna walk through them all together. How do you mark? No, go for it. You guys, what number you want? 2?
So this might be gas prices.
are you guys doing? Okay. Say again? Let's write down first, what is the formula for XCD?
I did exactly.
And what price? Yes, and what do we know?
We know
Yeah, so draw it, write it out like a math equation, so you know that XCD is this, XCD is and that's equal to what? What's the calculation that you do? Equal to. Yep. Yep. So in order to keep that, is 25%, you got to put 0.25. And then you've got to figure out how are you going to get that, right? That's what you have to do to both sides of this equation in order to find out what percentage change in market demand it is, right? Yeah, sorry, what? Which one are you on? The last one? Yeah. So what you, right, so what you, now, okay. The equation XCD is the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price, right? You know what the XCD is equal to, and you know what the percentage change in price is. That's right. So this amount right here is X. This whole amount is what you're trying to figure out. So this is X. So what you need to do is solve this equation for X. Yep. So when you figure out this, it's so this. Yeah, but wait. The first price, the price goes from 4 to 5. So the original price is 4. So at the bottom here, what should it be? Oh, it is new price minus
So it's 1,000.
the old price divided by.
Is it 1,000 minus 600?
Sorry, what for any?
How much did you get for the last one?
But it goes from 600 to changes forward plus.
Oh, I thought you were asking me.
You want to cheat?
Oh, it's 5 minus 4.
It's okay, I mean, it's fine because I want you, if you do get it wrong, just try to think about why, figure out why, that's
I
all.
don't understand why.
Wait, how much?
Alright, I do now, but like,
Price
can I
tag.
hear the exercise?
Yesterday, yeah.
We'll try 6 minus 8. Here. Yeah.
Here's like price goes from 5 to 6, price goes from 5 to 6 multiplied by 1. I tried to find that, then I get this. I got different answer than you guys.
Right.
Yeah, so this is
So here it should be
6 minus 5.
So you can only know 20%. You can only say you're going to say that's.
Except that equals.
Again.
So
Oh, there's 6. So does that make sense? Like it is, that is an amount. Yeah, always remember that when you're trying to calculate percentage change, it's based off what the original price was, not the new. It's always based off the old. That's how you figure out the difference. All right, how are you guys doing?
Just a couple like the sauce. You know how like they're like
Yeah?
those
You feel pretty confident?
things around my like cups, you know.
So you can identify that it's yours.
No, so like it doesn't. Yeah.
Bakari, I feel like you feel pretty confident. You want to do the first one?
For baby. Sure.
All right,
Yeah.
come on up.
Okay. Okay. Oh, did we turn it in?
I more just did that because I wanted you guys to write everything down.
I have written on the
I will, yes, you can turn it into me.
Spent all this time.
Don't make any changes. You can make changes, but maybe make them in a different color. All right, you guys, so Bakari, why don't you walk us through your thought process.
Okay, so first we know that the price of good M increases by 15%.
price increases by 15%. And we know that the quantity demanded goes down by 5%. We know to calculate the XED, you need to do the percent of quantity demanded over percent of price, the change in that.
Mm-hmm. The change in that, yep.
So I'm just going to make this negative since it goes down. So negative 5 over 15, which equals negative 1 over 3, which is equals
Negative 0.3. Did anyone not get that? Huh? Well, if you didn't, just make a note on your, take a minute and try to check what it is that maybe you did wrong to have not gotten that. Okay, so Bakari, what does that tell us? First of all, it's negative. What does that tell us?
Since it's negative, we know they're complements.
Mm-hmm.
And since it's less than 1, we know it's inelastic.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore,
That's okay. Does that make sense, you guys? Nice work. Oh, an example, yes. What's an example of two goods that may demonstrate this relationship? So, the observation you just made, you know number one, they are what?
we know that they're complements
Yep.
and that they're inelastic.
Mm-hmm. So what does that mean when they're inelastic?
It means that if one's price were to increase or decrease or to change, then the quantity demanded of the other one would not change that.
Mm-hmm. So what's an example of two goods that may demonstrate this?
I did nuts and bolts because you need both, but so if you need one, you need the other, so can't really be affected by one or the other specifically.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, did you guys hear that? The whole example of the complement. So we know that with this value, it's 0.3, right? So it's less than 1, and then that way we know it's inelastic, which tells us what about the relationship between the two complements? Is it strong or weak? Mm-hmm. Weak. So they're complements for sure, but they're not as strong of complements as something else. So Bakari's example, nuts and bolts, because they're not necessarily having to be used together, right? Yeah, Mark?
Popcorn and cinnamon
Popcorn and yeah. There we go. Okay, nice, Bakari. Thank you. All right. Alex, you want to do two?
Oh, sure.
Okay. So walk us through it, Alex.
So since it's percentage change of quantity demanded over percentage change in price, I first find percentage change.
Yeah. So far, so good, guys? Is this what you had done? Yeah? All right. Who got that? Yeah? Nice. What does that tell us, Alex?
That goods A and B are complements because it's negative, and since it's higher than 1, it's elastic.
Mm-hmm. So what would be? Yes, strong complements. So what's maybe an example of goods that are strong complements? Yeah.
Maybe French fries and ketchup.
French fries and ketchup? I don't know.
Awesome.
Strong? What else? What could be a strong complement?
Computers and monitors.
Computers and monitors.
You can't buy it.
Yeah.
Engineers and duck eggs.
You can buy computers without monitors.
No, but like those old like things that
Car
need a
wash
monitor
water.
to show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like
So,
this old-
like a what, yeah, those computers that you have to plug into a monitor to use.
Yeah.
That's a
Car
good example.
washes and water.
Which one?
Car washes and water.
Dude,
Car washes and water?
Or soap.
Anything.
Well, water you would use if you weren't necessarily in a car wash.
Soap and water.
Car washes.
Yes, so the car,
Shampoo,
yes.
conditioner.
Why don't we try a real life example?
Yeah.
So something that meant a lot of money. How many people can remember the story of Carly Fiorina and Hewlett Packard?
Printers and.
That was a story.
Anybody want to relate that story?
That was a story.
So Miss Fiorina comes into Hewlett Packard, she's the new CEO, and she tells everyone, she wants to make what? And sell it at almost cost.
Sheet printers.
Printers, yeah.
The word was dirt sheet.
At almost
And she
five.
said that because we're not making money on the printers, we're making money on the printer ribbon.
Printer and ink.
So what do you guess Miss Fiorina, who's no dummy, did before making this decision?
Supply and demand schedule.
She tried to figure out what.
How much ink would cost?
We don't have to go with supply and demand. She got consultants to figure out what.
Price of
How much you could charge?
How complimentary they were.
total
Cross
revenue.
price elasticities, right?
Yeah.
And my guess is she came up with something like 3 point something, 4, I don't know, my guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a really good point, right? I mean, when we're looking at cross-price elasticity, it's really important for producers in certain markets to understand if their good is a substitute or a complement to another, how a change in their price would affect other things, or how a change in the price of something else would affect the quantity demand of theirs, right? All right, number 3. Who wants to do number 3? I keep on calling on you guys. Maybe there's somebody that's just really excited about number 3. I feel like Hannah's really excited about number 3.
Nobody do it up there, just say it.
You can say it. Well, I'll write it down. Okay.
Okay, so you have to do an equation which is X percent over 4 minus 5 divided by 5%. Like that's a quantity.
So does this make sense, you guys, about the fact that we do not know? Oh, that's all. Which one is the price?
Original price of each
5
one.
minus 4.
5 minus 4.
5 minus 4.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So we don't know the quantity demanded, right? That's what we're trying to figure out. What do we know? Anna?
The change in price.
Yeah, and what else?
Oh, the XD.
What's the XCD?
0.8. So that equals 0.8.
0.8.
Negative 0.
Right? We know the XCD is negative 0.8. We know what the percentage change in price is, but we do not know what the percentage change in quantity demanded is, and that's what we're trying to figure out, right? So what's the next step, Hannah?
Well, then you find what 5 minus 4 divided by 4 is, which is 0.20. 0.25. 0.25. It goes 0.8, and then you multiply 0.8 by 0.25.
Yeah.
Negative.
Negative 0.8. So what is X?
And that's negative 0.2.
Negative 0.2? Who got that?
Wait, that's the percentage.
Oh, so as a percentage, it's what? Negative 20?
Yeah. 20%, but it's negative. Okay, nice work, Hannah. So what does that tell us? I mean, let's try to understand this value here, right? Because that's what we can use to interpret what this is and what this means. So what is it? It's negative, so what does that tell us?
That the quantity demanded went down.
What does the fact that it's negative tell us in regards to whether or not, like what type of good it is? Are they complements? Are they substitutes?
But yeah, they're complements.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to work from the XCD.
It's what?
It's easier to work from the XCD if you know it right off the bat.
Yes, very true. Very true. Okay, so, does anybody have any issues with any of these? Yeah. I know, yeah, you're right, Hannah. I was thinking it was the XCD, but it's not. It's the quantity demanded. Okay, so, we're going to do a little bit of a case study. Camels. So, I have an article for you guys about camels in India.
You should have this on the website as well.
Oh.
I mean, as well.
So, this article will relate to cross-price elasticity of demand. So first, before I show you guys the questions, just read through this article and try to, highlight things that you think are important in regards to cross-price elasticity of demand. You won't? And yes, Hannah, you were right. I was thinking about the lights. That's why I had asked which ones. All right, so take a minute or take a few minutes, read through it, highlight key points that you think are important for us to use, and then I'll take us to the questions and kind of go through those. Another word for camel. There are certain words you guys don't know, let me know. There are a couple in here that are a little bit interesting. Yeah, even-toed, ungulates. What do you think those are? They're camels. Has anybody ever seen a camel? Yeah?
Yes, I've heard no one.
Yeah? Feels weird, right? A lot more.
When it gets up, it's so weird.
Maybe it's the humps.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
All right, Mark, find some key points in there. Philip, what's important in that article?
How the relationship between the camels and tractors, and how they are substitutes. Meaning,
Wait, don't give it all away. Hold on, write down your points. Let everybody take a second to interpret the article in the way that they want. You done, girl? Okay. Don't worry if you haven't finished reading it, I'm just going to change to the questions now, okay? So for this, I'm hoping you guys can actually write the answers on the back of this paper. And these I will take, okay? So just read through the article and then try to interpret these different questions. And then we'll just finish this in the next 15 minutes. You guys can give them to me. And then we'll talk about it. And just so you know, fodder trees, which they refer to, they're the trees that camels eat. Ooh. sense? I always remember when you guys are reading articles like this to just think about what is logical when you read it. Before you even go to calculate anything, just think about what it should be. You know, should they be complements, should they be substitutes, and then let your equations kind of back up what you think is rational. I want to do something in here. Because I can finish this up and we can learn this one. Hopefully the sound's on.
So we just have to calculate the XCD for Kim?
Hmm?
We just have to calculate the XCD. That's it?
Yeah.
We have to-
No. Well, I mean, you'll be talking about it, you're providing a hypothetical rationale in the beginning, and then hopefully the answer that you get for the XED is links to what you guys thought made sense, based on your observations. So you can maybe even say at the end, as the XED shows, I was right. It is clear that.
I was right.
No. It is clear that. On the other hand, make sure you put your name on it too, okay?
So you're gonna do 130 minus 1. Do that.
Okay.
We can guess that this comes from where, this little story. Really?
They both got it wrong.
Where do you think it might have come from, this little story?
No, but I mean like the
Philip?
conclusions.
Where do you think it might have come from, this little story?
India?
Well, what source? A newspaper, I would guess, right? So what are we looking at here for future use as well? Yeah, this is, if you're lucky enough to get an article, find an article like this, look at how you can stretch it. Okay? How many of you remember that little exercise I gave you that had to do with ladies cutting grass in front of the Taj Mahal? All right, in case you have any doubts about it being inefficient or efficient, the answer is really, it all depends, right? You can move to a lower technology method, it's cheaper.
Oh my God, you know, you can.
Take a moment.
Dude, what happened to that?
You good? You good?
So we have to write
You get on here last, like,
Yeah.
20.
Write your name. Put your name down if you haven't already, so I don't forget.
That was me.
You doing well?
Do we have to explain what this means? Are there any questions?
Well, I mean, what you can say is, as I mentioned above,
Oh, yeah.
like this holds true, my assumption is correct. Hopefully it is.
Yeah.
Oh, God. any opportunity to draw a graph in here too. People like graphs. Mr. Marking, right?
Very much so, yes.
Do you figure out a way to draw a graph?
What?
Bonus points.
Are we getting grades?
No, I'm just saying, when you're going to take an IB exam and everything is based on a certain amount of points, they're looking for different things, right? And being able to associate a graph with an observation is valuable.
Let's get a TOK question here. Why do you think they find this valuable?
Because it shows different ways of
You do
knowledge,
it,
areas
graph,
of knowledge.
Hmm?
It shows different areas of knowledge.
Yeah, a graph is what? What do we call a graph?
Model.
Model, yes. So you can think in terms of a model. So you can analyze it very objectively with a model. Critique probably may lie with a model.
So would you say input cost?
Philip, what would you say? What do you think? Try to break it down in your head, go step by step, think about what would happen. And maybe, you know, more than one thing could potentially happen. You just have to argue your point. Based on an assumption that you make, something happens. Yeah, I saw your graph there, that was fun.
What's the opportunity? Implicit.
Yeah, but, I mean, any opportunity, throw in different economics terminology that you think may be relevant, do that. I'm very friendly with my bonus points.
You're grading this?
I'm going to read them. I'm going to use these to help gauge your level of understanding. So try hard. Yeah. But I responded well to it, and I thought, when I wanted to actually print it out, it's like very fine artists. Yes, yeah. Yeah. We'll see, I mean, put it in there, argue your point. You know, just showing that you're thinking through it is valuable.
I'm drawing.
How are you doing, Philip?
Drawing one.
Are you?
These lines are.
Those are.
Where are you at right now?
I'm doing
Wise?
3.
Yeah? What are your thoughts so far? I think you're lucky.
Looking at ends.
You done? Nice. Where's your name? It's okay. You guys, if you haven't put your name on it, put your name on it now, please. Nice work, Alex. That all made sense to you? Sorry? That all made sense to you?
Well, if I got it right, it did.
Yes.
And if you didn't, that's fine. We'll talk about this next time together. This is good. And if you're finished, you can give them to me. Is your name on it? Yes. Great.
So this is from the Financial Times, I believe, right?
I think so. You good? Great. Thanks, I'll put your name on there. Where? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Mr. B, it's okay if they've done? Can
Oh,
they
I
go?
think we're all a little hungry.
All right, guys,
They're
so
on
if you
bagels
didn't
and
finish, you can take it home and finish it and give it to me next class, or you can give it to me this class, but we'll talk about it next time together.
Thank you.
Bye. You gotta put your name on it, and give it to me, or take it home, if you wanna work on it more. Your name,
My
okay.
name's not.
That's okay, as long as it's on the one side. Bye.